A festive day in Gotham City.
Good evening, folks. Tonight, on a very special Batcave episode, we're going to discuss the women's movement and the ramifications it had on the Batman 1966 television series, in particular, the character of Barbara Gordon and her alter ego, Batgirl. We're going to take a look at, who are we kidding? This has got to be the worst episode that we're about to review, so let's just get on with it, shall we? Welcome back, citizens, to an all-new episode of the Batcave Podcast. It's your old bat chum, John Estrew here, and wow, second season, when we got to Marsha, Queen of Diamonds, I thought, okay, this is the bad one, this is going to be tough, and along comes Robert Long, and he jumps in, and he takes that episode, and then I had forgotten, I guess maybe it was a mental block, I'd completely forgotten all about Nora Clavicle, and the third season rolls in, and I put out the call to everybody saying, hey, who's up for these episodes? And there was silence for a long time for the final group of episodes in the third season anyway. But then, some people were like, okay, I'll do this. But Nora sat there all by herself. And I was fortunate enough to make contact with a new member of the podcast here, a new person to enter the Batcave. He's the co-host of the Super Mates Podcast, and he's agreed to take the bullet for the team here, to take one for the team and help me along in figuring out any merits, I don't know. Welcome to the podcast, Chris Franklin. Hi,
John. How are you?
I'm good. I've always got to ask before we even get started talking about Nora. Let's talk about something a little more happier here. Okay. Batman 66. For you, where do you sit with this series? Are you one of those ones who saw it originally? Were you a syndication baby, as I call myself and others who've been on the podcast?
I am definitely a syndication baby. And baby is the opportune word because I cannot even remember a time that I didn't watch Batman 66. I'm pretty sure it was probably on TV in the room where I was born or something. I mean, that was definitely, if you crack my head open, Adam and Bert come running out. Yeah, and then my wife always says, then me and the kids come out, so. So, yeah, I go way back, in the 70s when it was in heavy syndication, probably mostly from Channel 19 and out of Cincinnati. I'm in Central Kentucky, so Channel 19 in Cincinnati was our syndicated station that showed all sorts of reruns, and they had Batman on. Usually it was like an hour every day. They'd show the two-parter, and right. Then when they got to season 3, they just, mix things up. But yeah, it was on from when I was, first born up until like the mid 80s. And then it kind of disappeared. And, I was a big comic fan. That's what got me into comics, and that and the Super Friends and the George Reeves Superman reruns and things like that. It went away, in any syndication in my area for a while. Then, of course, I started getting my teen years, and I like Batman, the comics was darker and grittier, and, and then the movie came out and the Family Channel started airing Batman again. But unlike most people, I never completely turned my back on it. I never said it's awful, I hate it, look what it did to the character and all that. The people talk about the 3 stages of Batman 66. When you love it when you're a kid, then you hate it when you're a teenager, and then when you're an adult, you come back around to it. But I always I guess for a while there, I kind of thought it was the lovable but crazy uncle in terms of the family reunion. But you know what? Now I really love that uncle. And fully accept him as part of the family. So there you go.
I like that imagery there. I do like that. So you never sort of shied away from it. What was it, though? I mean, I know there were a lot, because there was a lot, even though we only had, many of us had 3 or 4 TV stations, major ones, and maybe a few syndicated ones and such. But what was it about Batman that drew you to it and made you keep coming back?
I don't know. If I could solve that riddle, then I would know the meaning of my own life. I mean, they seem to be so intertwined. I mean, one thing, I collect toys as well as comics, and there's not a room in my house other than the bathroom that doesn't have something Batman in it. At least one thing. So I'm no Joe Desris or whatever, with a huge collection, but I have always, as the '66 show was on in syndication, I'd have the Migos, and and they were very much like the '60s Batman TV show, and then I got the superpowers when they come out. So I mean, as things went along, I mean, I guess it was just I wanted to own parts of the show. I identified with it so much and played with the toys, and of course I'd had the Ben Cooper play suit and play as Batman. And I don't know, it's just something, it just, whatever it is that appeals to kids about superheroes like Batman and Superman, it just really floored me and knocked me over. And I think as much as I love Batman '66, I think I saw Superman the movie when it first came out in '78, and I had not seen Star Wars, because I was just young enough. My parents thought it might scare me. I was kind of a little weenie when I was a kid. So the next year they figured I was okay for Superman, and that was my Star Wars. So the combination of Batman '66 on TV all the time and then seeing Superman the movie really just hammered in this love for superheroes, and I just never got out of it.
Now, you say you've got Batman, items, material, and such throughout your house, and your wife co-hosts the podcast with you, the Super Mates podcast. How is she in terms of being a Batman '66 fan? Does she share in that love? Does she watch the show with you? Did she watch this episode with you?
She did. She did the first time I watched it, when I said, "Oh, I'm going to be on the show. We need to, I need to watch this." When her and my teenage son watched it with me, and they both had different responses, which we'll get into, but we can get into later. But
sure,
yeah, she's a fan of it. She really likes. She's a big fan of Yvonne Craig's Batgirl, and so she kind of collects Batgirl stuff. She collects Barbies and fashion dolls and things, and she actually got the toner. The Toner Doll Company released like an 18-inch tall Yvonne Craig Batgirl that there was only like 500 made. She got one.
Wow.
So, so she proudly displays Batgirl. And I was like, yeah, I was behind that. So, I've got the Hot Toys, Adam West and Burt Ward, and she's got that. So it kind of worked out well. So I wish they were in scale, but, hey, but yeah, so I have a very enabling wife. She's wonderful in all things, but for me, it's great that I kind of dragged her into the toy collecting thing. I think she figured, well, as many times as we keep going to Toys R Us, I really should start collecting something. So she started collecting Barbies, and it just snowballed from there. So.
You're pretty lucky, let me tell you. My wife has a tolerance for the third season because she does like Yvonne Craig too. But if I'm watching first or second, she usually just tunes out.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'd say that Cindy prefers, although most diehard Batman fans, as much as they love Batgirl, would prefer to watch season 1 or 2. She prefers 3 just because of Batgirl too.
Yeah. So let's talk about this episode. Nora Clavicle and the Ladies Crime Club. It's a cool title. I mean, to start things off there. It aired on January 18th, 1968. And our teaser, once again, not a typical teaser. We're not getting a crime and the call to Batman or anything. We're at a function, a luncheon for Commissioner Gordon, where he's being honored for 25 years of civic service. And I did like that little bit because, again, it starts putting sort of the whole little history of Batman into perspective. You've got Gordon being involved in civil service for 25 years. Batman is now into year 11 of his crime fighting, because we were told in the Riddler episode last season that, he'd been on the scene for 10 years. So
that's right.
I know the show never worried much about continuity, but it's one of those things that you just can't help but want to just start filling in the gaps.
Right. So for maybe the first 14 years, Commissioner Gordon actually did something.
Yes. Well, that's the thing, too, because we've established, at least on the talking in the podcast here, that it's quite possible that Black Widow was an adversary of Commissioner Gordon's before Batman. The way he talked about her and the way Batman sort of like we finally meet at one point there. So maybe, yeah, in those early days, in the first 14 years, he met a young Black Widow, and who knows, maybe he even knew we were saying Max Black, her husband, her dead husband.
Yeah. That's I like to think of that. That's nice.
Yeah. There's something maybe the Batman 66 comic was missing a beat and is actually trying to fill in the gaps on things like for us continuity buffs.
That's right.
You know? Well, and as we see from the scene, Mayor Linseed and his wife are conspicuously absent as they pan across, and we've got Dick and Bruce and O'Hara and Gordon and Barbara and such. And when the two do arrive, though, they're clearly arguing. Linseed steps up to the table, the main table at the luncheon.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a token of our appreciation for Commissioner Gordon's long service, I wish to present him with this 24-karat gold watch. Commissioner. And now, due to circumstances beyond my control, that is, due to overwhelming considerations, I hereby discharge Commissioner Gordon. And in his stead, I appoint as the new police commissioner of Gotham City, Miss Nora Clavicle.
Famous Nora Clavicle.
I didn't realize her crusade for women had gone this far.
I'd say she's won that crusade.
Saints preserve us. Saints preserve us all.
And I'll tell you, O'Hara says it best because it just sort of sums up the whole episode in general. Saints preserve us as they go to credits.
Yes. Yeah, that whole opening scene, I mean, it's just, for one, you get the limited backgrounds of season 3. There's a table, and there's like a backdrop, and then the rest of the room's just like black.
Yes.
So you're in that weird, empty space of this, and we'll get into that even more as this episode progresses.
Oh, this is definitely High School Musical sets here coming up.
Yes, it is. Did you notice Dick was drinking milk out of a champagne glass?
Out of a champagne glass. I actually went looking as they were continuing the pan to see if Bruce had one too, but I couldn't see one.
I think it seemed like Bruce. I thought I saw Bruce actually have some kind of liquid of color in his glass, but I can't imagine it was alcohol because I'm sure it was like apple juice or something.
Something, yeah. Oh, so when we come back from the credits, Act 1, there's Nora stepping up to the table where the sign, that was honoring Commissioner Gordon is replaced with her name. And she intends to continue her crusade for women's rights by using her new position. And she goes on to appoint Mrs. Linseed as the new police chief. It's clear that Linseed has been, swayed by her feminist ideas and such. And once that's all done, it's a weird transition because then it just immediately goes to a little later on and everybody's cleared out except for our main characters and Linseed, who then admits he was bullied into appointing Nora by his wife, who just basically, he came close to saying, I got the feeling, I kept waiting for him to saying that she wasn't being romantic, but it was more like I haven't had a meal in weeks and I'm wearing the same shirt all the time. She wasn't doing her wifely duties.
Right. And it's so ludicrous to think that, okay, this guy's the mayor of a major metropolitan city, and he doesn't have a butler. He doesn't have a maid.
Right.
He can't go to a restaurant and get something to eat or go to the dry cleaners or, I'm sure Mrs. Linseed probably didn't do all that herself anyway.
Exactly. Although she could have ordered the staff not to do it. Who knows?
Well, that's true. That's true. She could have instructed him, because he's not following the Nora Clavicle way, then
Right.
cut him off.
Right. Oh. And then we get, and we talked about this before the podcast started. We cut back to the Batcave, and Nora Clavicle calls Batman, telling him his services will no longer be needed, and she cuts the line to the Bat phone.
Mm-hmm. Did we ever see that line before?
No. Now that you mention it, no, I don't think I've ever seen a line coming from the phone before. There's no line that I can think of coming from the one in the study.
Right. I had never noticed it before. I always kind of assumed, I guess I never even thought about it, but I guess after I saw it, I always had assumed that it came up through the pedestal that it was on,
Maybe,
but
but even still, you'd see something because there's enough shots. I mean, it's from the we're seeing them from the fourth wall, and it's now you got me thinking. I got to go look back at a couple of episodes and see if I can see the wire.
So they put in a wire just so she could cut it.
Yeah. And even though okay, this is all strange and everything. As far as Batman's concerned, no crime is going on, but it doesn't mean that they can't go into Gotham and just sort of look around and make sure that there's nothing odd going on in general. And Batgirl has the same idea as she gets in the Batgirl cycle and heads off to, cruise around the city. We cut back to, well, I was going to say Gordon's headquarters, and it's a nice little touch there when William Dozier actually says, Nora Clavicle's office and such.
Right.
And we learned that Mrs. Linseed has fired every man on the police force and replaced them with women, which has impressed Nora that she's been able to round up that many women to keep the force, going and such. So she sends Linseed off to take care of something.
Now that she's out of the way, you girls may proceed with Operation Ransack, while I proceed with Operation Disaster Insurance.
But what about Batman and Robin, boss?
Those masked menfolk. Sure. And what about Batgirl? Oh, yes. I forgot about her. With a woman helping them, Batman and Robin might just give us some trouble. But all we have to do is make a call and lead them into a trap.
We can't call them, boss. You cut the wire.
So I did. But we can still lead them into a trap.
Well, how? How can we find them?
Where does one usually find Batman and Robin?
Well, usually they're at the scene of some crime.
Aha!
Oh, yes. I see what you mean.
And that's when we learn the whole well, not even the whole plan yet. The part of the plan. That's at least something too. We don't know the final outcome yet of what she's planning.
Well, I don't think they did. Maybe when they were filming it, they might not have even known. I'm not sure, but the way it comes out, I'm not. Because we can get into that later too. But there's a reason she didn't know, maybe.
Right. So she then sends her girls. She doesn't have goons. She's got two girls, and this is unusual. Here she is dressed in what you would consider. And I don't want this to sound wrong, but it's feminist garb for the 60s. It's very business sharp. It's to the point. And then she's got two striking blondes dressed up in these Greek goddess outfits.
Yeah.
Which makes no sense.
No, it was almost like they were lost hench people from a Marsha, Queen of Diamonds episode, or the Siren.
Oh, the Siren,
even better. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, they kind of were dressed the same way.
Yeah.
So
actually, what they reminded me of was maybe the rejects from Liberace's trio of girls.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah. She sends the girls off then to proceed with Operation Ransack, and I did like this little bit here. She worries about the fact that Batgirl is working with Batman and Robin. If the two of them were working together just alone, no worries. Her plan would go off without a hitch. But since Batgirl's working and she's a woman, that could be a problem. So she needs to set a trap for the three of them, and then the only way she can do that is to stage a crime in order to draw them out.
Yes.
I like that. I got to admit, I like that little bit.
Yeah, that was probably the most, competent part of her plan.
Which unfortunately, though, leads into one of the worst scenes in the episode when the two girls, I got their names here. They're so forgettable. That's the thing.
Right, yeah.
Evelina and Angelina. Yeah. They, go to rob the bank, and when the bank manager tries to get any of the female police officers, whether it's the one in the bank or the two outside or another one, one is doing her makeup, which he manages to ruin, startling her. Two are talking about cooking, and the fourth one's like, I can't chase after them in these new shoes. It's just, wow.
This is where the real message of this story comes in.
Yeah.
and you're really wondering, okay, is this still satire or...
Yeah, exactly.
Was somebody mad at their wife when they wrote this episode? It's so broad. It's just, and I know we're going to get into that. I don't want to slow down the synopsis.
Yeah. Well, see,
we'll get into it later.
Well, here's the thing. We're looking at it through 2016 eyes. And I can't help but feel, even in 1968, that people watching that, even, maybe not the most staunch feminists, but people who could respect a woman, found it just stupid. I don't know. Or maybe they thought it was as hysterical as, what's his name doing Jose Jimenez. I don't know.
Right. He's good for a bat climb.
Yeah, exactly. Now, speaking of wives, what did your wife think of that scene? Did she have any comments about that when she saw that?
Oh, that's when she really started moaning and groaning about it. Yeah. She was like, oh, brother, and my son was laughing at it, because it's just so, short of the women asking a man to club him over the head and drag him off. Yeah, that was just, yeah, wow.
And then it gets worse, because then we see that the police dispatch is being used more for announcing sales than talking about ongoing crimes. It's only like as an afterthought that says, oh yeah, by the way, the bank was just robbed. And fortunately, Batman and Robin and Batgirl are listening to it in the Batmobile's police band radio.
Right, and they actually, used an actual set, probably from the studio lot, one of the city streets there. So we actually got to see a full set.
Yes.
While they were parked in the Batmobile and on the Batgirl cycle there. I thought it was kind of funny. I was like, this might be the only episode where Batman actually goes on patrol. You don't see that very often. He's usually he reacts to when Gordon calls him, and then once a case is going, we see him driving from point to point as he's, putting the clues together, or heading out to the villain's hideout or something. But, in the comic books, it's always been, they go out on patrol when nothing's going on. But in the TV show, we never got that much. So that was kind of nice to see. I think they definitely should have been on patrol given what was going on.
Yeah.
With an even more inept police force than they had before.
Right. Now, it's interesting, though, because they race to the bank. And then they decide to use the portable Bat computer. Because Robin's like, oh, let's go back to the Batcave. And he's like, no, we don't have time. We'll use the portable Bat computer. You not only don't have time to go back to the Batcave, you don't have time to show us the portable Bat computer and the results. And it's interesting because when he says, let's use it, they run around to the back of the Batmobile. So I'm thinking, okay, now the portable Bat computer's back in the trunk again? Because, it was in the trunk in the first season. And then over the course of the second season, it moved up to the dashboard, to a little handheld thing in the Black Widow episode. Now it's back in the trunk.
Right. Alfred, I guess Alfred just keeps, moving it around just to keep him busy or keep him guessing or something.
I guess. Yeah.
It's according to which Batmobile they had, for use that day. Was it the fuzzy black Batmobile with the flocking on it? I don't know.
Oh, so it spits out an answer, which we don't see any of it. Next thing you know, they're heading to the Drop Stitch and Company warehouse, where they go inside, and Nora manages to get the drop on Batgirl.
Don't make a move, Batgirl.
Nor are you either, dynamic duo.
Holy knit one, pearl two.
Exactly, Boy Wonder. This needle is razor sharp and can puncture her jugular vein in an instant.
All right, girls, let's tie the terrific trio into terrific Siamese human knots. You are wise to stay motionless, or you will be the terminated trio. The slightest move by any one of you will only draw the human knot tighter, crush your bones, and strangle you.
Holy hamstrings.
Exactly, Robin. This is torture at its most bizarre and terrible.
Now, again, we don't have big burly men doing this, so I don't understand how, even with the razor-sharp needle at Batgirl's throat, how she manages to convince them all to sit down on the floor and let her and the other two tie them up into a human Siamese knot. I'm sorry. I know there's a lot of things, and I always say Gotham City logic and Batman logic, but this one just makes no sense whatsoever.
This one just felt like it was a case of, they just they put him in the knot.
Yeah,
they couldn't figure out how to do it, so they did a bat sweep, and then when they come back, they're in the knot.
Right.
And I mean, even getting them to the hideout that they were, or the warehouse where they were supposed to go. I mean, what the clue was, because it's a bunch of feminists, so they have a sewing needle factory. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I went back and watched it again. I'm like, okay, what was the clue that made them think of that? And it's like, no, it was just one of those random. The Bat computer spits it out because it's omniscient and knows what's going on type things. But the human knot, I think that's the thing that everybody remembers about this episode.
They do remember that from the episode. And again, just like at the end of the teaser, Batman makes commentary, I don't think just about the situation, but about the episode itself, because he's got that line where he says, torture at its most bizarre and terrible.
Maybe that was Adam, just, the way he said it too is just with it dripping of, just the way he said it was just torture, just something slow and at his jaw all dropped down, So I thought that was a very nice commentary on the whole ordeal.
Yeah. And just like any villain, though, she can't just walk away and leave them. She's got to say something to them. She reveals to the three that she will destroy the city for the insurance money. Now that she's, commissioner, she was able to buy this big insurance policy. It only cost her a couple of $100, and she'll walk away. I think it's like 10 million or something like that with the city leveled. And she leaves them behind because she figures they can't get away because they're all tied up in the knot.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not really sure that in any universe that would logically work, that a police commissioner could take out an insurance policy on the city.
Right.
And why would you have to be the police commissioner to do that? I mean, this is where the two parts of the plot don't connect.
Right.
And then there will soon be a third part that doesn't connect.
She couldn't. All right, the whole thing with the commissioner, that may not be as much to do with the buying the insurance policy, but it's making sure that nobody can stop her, because we see the next part where outside she lets loose a swarm of these mechanical mice all rigged with explosives. And what is it that all women are afraid of, except Batgirl? Mice. So, right. She needed to be police commissioner in order to appoint Linseed, who then in turn would fire all the men. So this way you would have no resistance in terms of anybody trying to stop the mice from going off. Like maybe the cops might do something, the male cops, but a female cop wouldn't do it. And as we see, because what's her name? Mrs. Lindsay's up on the desk with one of the other cops.
We know about the mice. But I'm afraid my police force won't be very much help to you. Officer, are those mice still down there?
Yes, Chief Lindsay.
Oh, excuse me, Robin. I'm afraid I'm going to faint.
Oh, me too.
And they faint.
Yeah.
Even though it's a mechanical mouse, not a real mouse, but mechanical mice.
Yep. And speaking of the men, we get a quick little scene, just in case we've forgotten, with Gordon and O'Hara and all the other fired male police officers standing in line for unemployment. So they get a couple of moments, talking about they don't know what else to do with themselves, so they have to stand in line and collect their unemployment. It's such a silly scene. It makes no sense whatsoever in the course of it all. I'm sure they could have done other things, maybe to add some more to this plot.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think this episode, I think you can clearly see that some of the actors had to have a certain amount of time in each episode that they were contracted to be in, or maybe whoever was in charge of salary and budget said, okay, to get our money out of this actor, they have to be in this many scenes, this many minutes of filmed footage, because that's the only reason I could see that we spend time with them, and then later on when another character appears out of nowhere in the resolution of the episode, which we'll get to in a little bit.
Yep. Because you got to have everybody in the cast in this, even if it makes no sense.
Right.
Oh, yeah. So we go back to the Batcave, back to the warehouse, and Batgirl's complaining about getting cramps in her legs, but Batman feels it's perfect because he could use that to their advantage.
The involuntary muscular contractions in Batgirl's legs may indirectly relieve the tension in your lower lumbar region.
Holy slip disc.
Not quite, Robin. If I can wiggle my ears, and if you are able to bend the fourth finger on your left hand just a fraction of an inch,
You might strangle us all.
release us, Batgirl. It's the basic formula for escaping from the Siamese human knot. I just recalled it. Ready?
Ready, Robin? Ready.
I'm beginning to wiggle my ears under my cowl.
All right. Releasing my fourth finger.
I'm wiggling.
I've got it.
For Batman universe, it's fine. It's fine. I have no problem with that in this episode, oddly enough. I had a problem with them getting into it. I have no problem with them getting out.
It's worth it to see Adam West move his head up and down inside his cowl.
Yes.
It's very strange. It's like his cowl's like staying still, but he's like almost getting his whole head out of the mouthpiece.
Yeah.
Now, how's that wiggling his ears? I don't know. But,
yeah.
Yeah. You know what? I've read where Yvonne Craig said Burt Ward was really complaining about the human Siamese knot because he apparently was very inflexible as far as, bodily. He wasn't very flexible. So, which is kind of surprising considering he was like an ice skater and knew some martial arts. I know it's debated on what he knew versus who you talk to, but,
right.
But it seemed, you'd think he'd be pretty flexible, but you think of the three of them, Adam West might be the least flexible because, of course, Yvonne Craig was a dancer, but that's what she has said. I've read that. So, that looks very uncomfortable. And I mean, even for people that work together all the time, I don't think I'd want to be like, well, I mean, with Yvonne Craig, yeah. But I mean, and I'm not saying anything my wife doesn't know. That's Crush from way back. But the rest of, it would be kind of awkward, okay?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And it's just like, it all goes downhill from this point. I mean, not that it was all that great to begin with, but it goes all downhill from this point on because they do get out with this weird way. They come out onto the street. They see one of the mechanical, mice moving about, and Batman manages to scoop it up and discovers the explosive device. He sees that the police really aren't going to be much help, but he has Robin call in to Mrs. Linseed anyway to try and mobilize the police. But like you said, yeah, they're up on the desk and they pass out.
What are you doing, Batman? This is no time for games.
Robin, look!
How'd you do it, Batman?
There's no time to explain, Robin. I want you both to play exactly the same tune that you just heard. Batgirl, you take the east side. Robin, you take the west side. East side, west side. I'll go through the midtown, and we'll meet each other at the docks. But just play, Robin. Play for all you're worth.
So Batman comes up with the idea of like short-circuiting their guidance systems or something with a selection of notes, and he basically, like the Pied Piper, they have to play this specific tune that will lure them, all the mice, towards the docks. And just like earlier when Nora sends out the mice, we get this whole series of the mice coming out of their hiding places where they've been sent, waiting for the detonation time and such. And it's just a quick series of shots. Again, something else filling up the episode when you probably could have had more story.
Yes, definitely.
With only moments left before disaster, the terrific trio and their retinue of rodents arrive at dockside.
Yeah, that is a very long montage of them. They have to show each character within, they have to show Batman, then they show Batgirl, then they show Robin, and then they show all the mice coming down the street that looks like it's made of construction paper.
Oh my God. That is the worst. In the entire series, that is the worst set piece they ever had. Yeah,
I definitely think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when they got to that, I think if they had shown that as a montage of them walking, playing the flutes, and that just behind them is like Dozier, said, the terrific trio leads the mice, blah, blah, blah. And he does do that, but they stay on that set.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem. Because sometimes you see things like that where the character in a movie or a TV show's walking and they've got little, the little clips of things going by them as they're moving, so to show that they're moving through the city. And we've seen things like that before, but they stay on that set for the rest of the episode until the clip at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. I will admit, though, I did like, and maybe it's because of just the DVD restoration and such, the colors pop more, the lines of mice as they're moving along the dock towards the water.
Right, yeah, that looked neat. And did you notice the mice look different when they were almost like little teardrop shapes when they showed them earlier.
Yep.
But at the end, when they're all going down, it almost looks like a conveyor belt.
Yeah.
They look more like they don't look like a real mouse, but the shape of them it's like a molded plastic toy mouse versus like a little teardrop shape.
It reminded me, actually, they kind of reminded me, I don't know if you ever played Mousetrap, the game. It reminded me of the mice from there.
Yeah, that's true. He needed a big plastic net to drop on top.
But it's like, okay, so they all come along, like you said, and they linger on the set. And what they do while they're on that scene is just ridiculous, because what happens? They get them all except for one. There's one there that seems to be shorting. It's sputtering. It's, and rather than just simply scoop it up and throw the damn thing, Batman's got to play the song again until he can coax it into the water.
Yes, and then he looks at the camera right as it drops in the water.
Yeah. Oh.
Which I know you love when Adam West looks directly at the camera.
Yes. Oh.
That part took forever, where the final little bit where he was down on, laying on his stomach, I guess, and, doing the flute thing, and that it seemed like that took like about 5 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, it did. It was just, and nothing happened. There was no dialogue. Nothing was going on. It was just, And then it's just, you think, okay, now we're done. No, hang on. We got to make sure, because we can't have a scene maybe back at Gordon's headquarters or something instead, because we put this, I was watching this, and I know that Dozier had to work with what he was given, and the network slashed the budget each season. And with the third season, they even wanted Burt Ward out of the picture, at some point, I think, in the third. They definitely, if they were going to bring it back for a fourth, they wanted him out and just have Batman and Batgirl working together and stuff. I almost think that scene, that whole thing with the pier and everything, was just a big FU from William Dozier to the network. It's like, you know what? This is what you gave me to work with. This is all I can do. I'm giving you High School Musical sets because they're shoddy and they're cheap, and that's it. And so, he wasn't just going to simply do it just for the short time. He was going to linger on that scene, because sure enough, the truck pulls up. They've captured Nora and the girls, and it's not just O'Hara and Gordon. Like you said, who's guarding them?
Alfred.
Where did he? It's not even, again, there's not a line in there where at some point Alfred's like, I haven't heard from Master Bruce or from Master Batman, whatever. I should go out looking for them. Maybe I'll get in the Alf cycle. I'll cruise the city, or something like that. No, he's there.
And he's got an umbrella pointing at him. So did he take it from the Batcave trophy room we've never seen?
Right.
Is that a penguin umbrella? Is it armed?
Armed? Exactly. There's just so much that's so sad about this thing.
Well, in the third season, I love Alan Napier as Alfred. I really do. He's still my favorite Alfred. But and I like it. I liked it when they gave him more to do. I really did, and he'd have a lot more to do in season 3. But this is so inorganic. It's just he was only in the one scene in the Batcave where they're Robin's like, come on, let's go, and Batman's like, well, there's nothing we can do right now, old chum, but and that's the only scene that Alfred's in, and then bam, he's at the end again.
Right.
It's like, where did he come from, and why don't Commissioner Gordon and Chief O'Hara start to get suspicious that Bruce Wayne Butler's fighting crime? It's like, okay. I just answered my own question. It's Gordon and O'Hara. And I think it's hilarious that at no point, even though he's no longer commissioner, do we ever hear the first name of Jim or James in this whole episode. He's just Commissioner Gordon or nothing. He has no first name.
That's true. You're right. Especially considering you'd think there'd be something said of his first name at the lunch.
Right. In the comic books, it already gave him the name of James W. Gordon, so it's not like it hadn't been invented yet. I know they didn't really flesh Gordon out too much until, well, honestly, like the 80s, really. Not even so much in the 70s, really, but in the comics. But, yeah, he did have a name.
Oh, man. I'll save it as part of the concluding part of the review there, my thoughts on this. But every time we introduce a new villain, I always like to take a moment to sort of break them down and such. There's nothing to break down here. This is just a woman, and I don't want to sound like I'm being sexist, but it's going to come across that way anyway. But she's a woman, and she's not even a very powerful woman. She's smart, in the sense that she takes advantage of the women's rights movement to get what she wants, not to advance anything as far as women are concerned. It's all an illusion. And instead, she actually plays more up to the stereotypes of women to get what she wants. But there's nothing redeeming about her to say, hey, gosh, I'd like to see her again.
No, there's definitely not that. I think it would have been, it's interesting. And, honestly, this didn't, I'll be honest, I read this online and I didn't, I guess it never occurred to me that Nora Clavicle, I guess I just heard the name so much, over the years, I didn't think of Gloria Steinem. Gloria Steinem was, of course, big in the feminist movement. And I apparently the Nora Clavicle was a play on Gloria Sternum, colon the sternum are adjacent to one another.
Oh,
so,
wow.
So I that's not from me. I think I read that on IMDb. So I will fully admit I did not come up with that on my own. But, Batman, the TV show would occasionally, you've mentioned the times that they would actually mention topical things, I mean, obviously they had the Flower Children with Louis the Lilac.
Right.
For them to do something with the feminist movement of the time, it made sense. To them to lampoon it in a way made sense. But this is just so, it's so, I can't decide if it's just a satire or a spoof that doesn't work, or it's just, I really don't know what to think of it. I can't decide. I think if they brought her in as a real feminist who, somehow, maybe she hooked up with the Penguin, and of course the Penguin's go straight. He says he's going straight. And, she somehow maneuvers her way into the commissioner's office. I'm asking way too much of the series, but if they had maybe even established her a few episodes before that she was just kind of this pest that kept, maybe she was running against Gordon for the job and she won, or something. And then you had the Penguin was, behind her campaign or something. And I know he already ran for mayor, but we know he was trying to marry Barbara to get in good with the commissioner's office. But, maybe, he convinces her to do some kind of, criminal reform program, and that lets some of the villains out. And then she finds out that, it would still be a pot shot at feminism, but you wouldn't go from, she wouldn't be an out-and-out villain. And you could have some interesting things. Maybe Batgirl at first kind of sides with her, because Batgirl in this episode, she even makes a crack about police women.
Yeah.
Like police women, all police women must be inept. It's just, you're fighting crime. You're a woman. Where does, Batgirl's like the only competent female in all of Gotham City in this episode. Yeah. And even she'll say that. It's so weird.
See, that was definitely something I was going to ask, because there are certain episodes where, like the Joker art episode from the second season we had discussed, was the author making fun of pop art? Was he on the side of it, or was he against it? And you gotta wonder, where did Stanford Sherman, who wrote this episode, where did he stand in terms of the feminist movement? Was he trying to say that, because I know you could read this into it and just say it's like, oh, well, like any woman, she just wants her come up, and she's not a real feminist. She's not a real equalitist, whatever. Or look at this. It's all evil. It's all, just out for me in the end. It's not about women's equality. And there's just so many ways you could look into this. It's like, where does this episode stand? Or is it just, hey, the feminist movement is hot at the moment. Let's do an episode on it, trying to acknowledge it in some way, and do it in the same Batman goofy humor that we always do.
Right. That's the only thing I can figure is that they started to develop it, and somewhere along the way they figured, hey, we're running out of time. They couldn't come up with, because the plot really, that's when it goes into her being, her not being a real feminist and just being another villain. That's, right. She's got, it almost would have been better if she was just some crazy female lawyer that had some kind of angle. Maybe I know they've already they did the Sue Batman bit in the very first episode with the Riddler, but if she'd slapped Batman with some crazy lawsuit or something, and she was legally wrangling some, deed to Gotham City, which I know they did that with the Native American bit in the, that was Egghead episode, yep. Right? Yeah. I know they kind of did that too, but it's not like they haven't repeated some plots before. But if they did something like that, and it was more like she was some like legal eagle, that was like she was this crazy, lawyer that nobody could beat. She won every case or something. But the whole angle with the insurance, and it's like the three things. You've got the feminist, the insurance angle, and then the mice angle, the Pied Piper angle.
Right.
It's like there's three different plots that don't go together, but yet they've forced them together.
They forced them together, yeah.
very strange. And you brought up the Pop Goes the Joker. Stanford Sherman wrote that episode.
Yep.
So, and he's written other, good that's a good, I think everybody, well, not everybody likes it, but a lot of people like that one.
A lot of people like that one, yeah.
His Honor the Penguin.
His Honor the Penguin, exactly. Another good one.
Right. And he wrote the first Batgirl one. So the guy did some good stuff on the show, but this just didn't come together.
No, it didn't.
This one always kind of jumped out at me because I didn't, and until I really looked up on IMDb, I really didn't know who Barbara Rush was that played Nora Clavicle.
Right.
I just wasn't, she's just an actress. It's just one of those weird things. I don't think I've ever run across anything with her that I knew of. Now, looking at her IMDb, I saw a few things I was aware of, but I didn't make the connections, and usually as I've gotten older, I've figured, oh, well, that's that actor. He was on Batman. And then, and obviously I see people, I mean, you watch any shows of the time, particularly like Star Trek or something, although there are 2 Star Trek actresses in this episode. The 2 twins that are outside the bank are 2 of the twin robots from I, Mud.
Oh, okay.
So maybe they were working for Colonel Gum. I don't know. But Barbara Rush, I guess she was big on Peyton Place not too long before this, and I just never bumped into her on anything before, so I wasn't familiar with her.
I actually forgot to mention that too, because I never made the connection as a kid. It wasn't until I was older, but she also was in a Bionic Woman episode from the first season called Jamie's Mother, in which she played a woman who was surgically altered to look like Jamie's mother, because it turns out Jamie's mother was actually a government agent and would go off on missions, and then Barbara Rush would step in as Jamie's mother, basically, pretending to be the mother so that, the world didn't know that the mother was really a secret agent.
Oh, wow. So you mean she was partially raised by someone who wasn't her mother?
Exactly.
Whoa.
Yeah. And then
okay, I'm gonna have to go back and watch Bionic Woman episodes. I haven't seen that one in a long time. I don't recall that one.
It's called Jamie's Mother. It's from the first season, and it's probably one of the best in the entire series, because it turns out that this woman, basically, when she was hitting hard times, started selling secrets that she learned to the other side and became a double agent, and then she double-crossed them, and they were looking to kill her, and she runs back to Jamie, trying to make her think that, she's her mother, when Jamie, has been thinking her mother's dead all along.
Wow, yeah. That's wild.
Yeah.
That'll mess you up.
It's a really good story.
Wow, that would, if that was on a TV show nowadays, they'd get a whole season out of that.
Exactly, yeah. Oh, man. Let me ask you, Bat Gadget, there was none. They did nothing, really. There's nothing to say as a favorite one, so I can't really, I can't, unless I'm missing something.
The bat flute?
They don't even, that's the thing. He doesn't even say, here's a bat flute. I guess he couldn't call it that, because then what would Batman be doing with 3 bat flutes?
I guess so. But, and would they really have cared about that in the previous seasons? That would have been where they had a little, fun with the whole bat branding thing. I mean, when the man pulls out a thermos to catch alphabet soup bits, I can't see why he wouldn't have 3 bat flutes in that utility belt too. You can say, "Remember, Robin, you were practicing for your recital, old chum."
Yes.
Gosh, yes, Batman. Or something. I mean, a quick line about that. Or if they'd shown them doing. I mean, that's what the first season would have done. They would have had Dick playing his flute for music class, and then him making some remark about, I don't see why this is so important, Bruce. And, well, music is the key to international understanding, old chum. Or I mean, and then you would have Chekhov's flute. It would have had to gone off at the end of the episode, right?
Right, exactly. or a line to the effect, "Music hath charms to soothe the savage beast," or something like he'd mangle the line or something, but it would work in because it's like, okay, now they're charming even these little beasts, the mice.
Right.
You know?
So. Yeah. I thought it was interesting. I went back and watched the end of the previous episode because of course, all these season 3 they usually show there's a little preview for who the villain's going to be next week,
right? And
they show Nora Clavicle, in her two Greek goddess cronies standing in front of course, black background, and she's got the sign that she's going to replace Gordon's name with that says Clavicle on it. So I was like, well, at least they had that much figured out. But
they got this. Yeah, I some people ask me, they say, you never talk about the endings of each episode with the reveal for the next week. And I'm like, because a lot of times it's something like the Nora Clavicle one that's just a straight up reveal, or at the end of this one where Penguin's calling Gordon and asking him, does he know anything about Ligerian fruit flies? And then by the time you get to next week, when the episode actually goes on, Gordon never mentions Ligerian fruit flies to Batman. They got to learn about it the hard way.
Right. It's like somehow that little bit's not really in the continuity of the show.
Exactly. So I just don't see the point in talking about it. I stick it on the audio from it at the end of the podcast, but to me, it's like trying to dissect that as part of the review just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, because then you've got to kind of rewrite history as you synopsize it. Yeah.
All right, so let me ask you this from Joel Eisner's official Batman Bat book. This is the trivia question, and I'm gonna give it to you the way he wrote it here, and then I'm gonna actually reword it to maybe it might make more sense. What happens only in this episode? Now that's his question.
It's wrong, but there's no bat fight.
Oh, okay, there you go. I didn't even have to reword it, but it is wrong. There is no bat fight.
Because there's no bat fight in Zelda the Great, right?
Exactly. Okay. And also, for that matter, I would actually say, I would reword the question to say what happened only in this story. Even, mind you, the question is still wrong, but the answer is still wrong. But because the fact is, there are plenty of episodes of Batman where bat fights don't occur, especially in the first season. We'll get the bat fight in the second episode. If you think about it, it's episodes and then the story arc itself.
Yes, there you go. That's true. Yeah. So this is one of the only 2 stories that doesn't have a bat fight.
Exactly.
I guess because Batman couldn't fight, a woman, and they wouldn't really let Batgirl fight.
Right.
She danced and kicked a little bit, but they wouldn't let her, throw a punch or really even, kick very much, honestly, which is, that still seems really weird.
Yeah.
I mean, Emma Peel was kicking the crud out of people, right? So
Emma Peel, what's her name from Stephanie Powers in The Girl from U.N.C.L.E., if I remember correctly, she was a fighter and such. I don't know. It just, that was the way maybe it's because it's Batgirl. I don't know. It never made sense. So, all right, let me ask you this. You're Robin, the Boy Wonder, and you've watched this episode now in entirety down in the Batcave with Batman. You turn to Batman, and how would you sum up the experience in a holy exclamation?
Holy satirical misogynist, Batman!
Okay, you got it better than I do. I was just going to go holy femininity. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, this is worse than Marsha, Queen of Diamonds. I could find at least something of value in Marsha, Queen of Diamonds, and there wasn't much there.
Right. I mean, yeah, at least you had Carolyn Jones, who, and Barbara Rush, I'm sure she's fine in other things, but it's like they couldn't decide what. She seems very buttoned down, but then when they show her with her cronies, she's like almost maniacal.
Yeah.
She's got this like really scary, crazy look on her face. She's very, very, even for this show, very broad with her, her villain monologues. I mean, she probably would have, Cesar Romero's Joker looking at her like, lady, you're nuts.
Oh, man. Yeah. Yeah, I don't see myself coming back to watching this one anytime soon.
No, I honestly think, it's still Batman 66. It's still worth watching because, because it is the show. You still got Adam, you got Bert, you got Yvonne, it's still got the trappings of part of the trappings, I think they'd already started tearing the sets down, maybe. I don't know. But but it probably earns the reputation for being the worst episode, honestly. Do you think it's the worst episode of the whole series?
At this point now, I would say yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I would definitely say that at this point now. I mean, I had Marsha, Queen of Diamonds pegged as the worst, and this far beats it because even the whole silliness with Batman getting married to her isn't as bad. God help me, this isn't as bad. But this is just, oof, yeah.
Even when it got silly before, it was still clever.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
This is just not clever anymore. It's just dumb. I can't really. I don't mean to be just to disparage anybody who worked on it, but it's missing that spark. I mean, even when they would get, like you said, I mean, the Marsha, Queen of Diamonds, when I was a kid, I would just groan when it came on.
Right.
It's like, oh, God, not this one again. I kind of like it's like the witch aunt's more interesting than Marsha.
Yes.
She's a witch.
Yeah.
But yeah, these two were both, and Dr. Cassandra and the Alvino Ray one too. And I know you got that one coming up, but this one, that one, and then the Marsha ones when I was a kid. And honestly, like you said at the time, the Black Widow one used to kind of be one I was just kind of like, oh man, where's the Riddler or the Joker or something? Even anybody. They even take Olga and the Egghead episodes.
Oh, jeez, really? See, now there you go. I put them way down on the bottom too.
Well, it's got Vincent Price, See,
but and that's the only saving grace. But it's just painful to see him acting so like befuddled and so he's not the super genius. He's still confident, but he's more childlike.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So as we come to the end of this episode here, Chris, how can people, well, first of all, tell us about the Supermates podcast. What's it all about?
Well, it's basically my wife, Cindy, and I, we cover any geeky topic that pops up that we want to talk about. We talk mostly comics, but we do cover, we cover some TV shows. We've covered a lot of the animated series, the Bruce Timm like Batman animated series and Justice League, and we have covered a few of the Batman 66 comic books over there. So we cover that. Every Halloween we cover classic horror movies, and so we just bounce around. We get to do some Star Trek. It's kind of whatever subject pops in our head, we talk about it. We have these conversations anyway, so we just decided to start recording them, basically.
Cool. That's something I've always wanted to do, is have my wife and I do a podcast, but she's just very she feels she has nothing to contribute. And I keep saying to myself, I don't know, all the conversations we have, I'm sure you could say something into a microphone, but
yeah, sure. Yeah, it's fun, and it's funny because now that we do the show, if we watch something and we know we might do a show about it, we'll be like, we'll start to talk to each other and we're like, wait a minute, save it for the show. and then we'll make sure we get to record pretty quick before we forget it. And we'll hold back stuff and she'll be like, did you notice this? And we used to have that conversation on the couch. Now we have it in front of a microphone. So
So, okay, I guess iTunes and Stitcher. Do you do Stitcher Radio?
No, we haven't been on Stitcher yet, but we're on iTunes, and we are at fireandwaterpodcast.com. We are a proud member of the Fire and Water Podcast Network. A lot of comic-related shows and a movie show, and we got a Star Wars show. Lots of great guys over there covering all sorts of topics of interest to the fans of fantasy, sci-fi, comics, things like that. So definitely worth checking out.
All right, very cool. I'll put links up in the show notes when we release this episode so people can track you down and such. And as far as social media, do you do any of the Twitter or anything like that?
Yeah, we're out on Facebook. Supermates is out on Facebook, so look for us at Supermates Podcast, and Fire and Water Network's out there as well. So you can check us out there, and Twitter. It's hashtag FW Podcast.
Well, Chris, once again, thank you for, doing this, because honestly, I don't know how I was going to manage, because nobody, I was like, even Robert Long, who had done Marsha, Queen of Diamonds, Robert was like, no way, not doing it.
Well, I will talk to anybody who wants to talk about Batman 66, even this one. And I've enjoyed your show, and I was happy to come on, even this one. If you want to talk about the equal pay commercial with Yvonne Craig, Burt Ward, and Dick Gaudier filling in for Adam West, I'll do that too.
Okay. Who knows? I mean, I did the pilot Batgirl episode. Why not an episode devoted to the commercial?
It took me years before I figured out that wasn't Adam West.
I know. Because he kind of is actually acting like Adam West is at the end of the third season anyway, where it's like, I don't care.
Right. Like a lot of this episode, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So, folks, just want to let you know, next time here on the podcast, the Penguin is back for a final bout with the terrific trio, and Chris Gould, author of Batman at 45, is back as well to discuss this episode with me. And, all I can say is this has got to go up from here with Nora Clavicle,
Yes.
So until next time, folks, thank you so much for listening. Chris, once again, thank you. Everyone, take care.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, chums. I don't have a bat phone, but you can contact the Batcave Podcast through its Facebook page, Twitter, email at thebatcavepodcast@gmail.com. Subscribe to the podcast via Libsyn.com. That's LIBSYN.com. Or through iTunes. The Batcave Podcast is part of a series of pop culture podcasts from the Chronic Rift Network. Find them at chronicrift.com. So until next time, citizens, same bat time, same Batcave Podcast.
Well, with Nora Clavicle behind bars.
Chief O'Hara, that's Clavicle.
Oh. Well, a rose by any other name, Commissioner. And what a rose she was, with Mrs. Linseed under her thumb and all those exploding mice under her feet.
Yes, at least she didn't pull it off, thanks to Batman, Robin, and Batgirl.
Do you think we'll have a breather now, Commissioner?
Oh, unless we get some disturbing phone call, Chief O'Hara. Commissioner Gordon. Penguin?
Just let me ask you one thing, Commissioner. Did you ever hear of the lethal Ligerian fruit fly?
And Commissioner Gordon certainly will hear of lethal Ligerian fruit flies, and so shall we all, when Penguin pulls his insidious insect antic in our next episode.